I'd like to introduce our essay speaker, John R. from the fine city of San Diego.
Over the past few days, I've been trying to milk my nervousness in the speech for everything it's worth, all the reassurances and hugs and we love yous and et cetera. It's been really worthwhile for me, really reassuring. I like sort of getting into that role occasionally just for a little contrast as opposed to my usual gung-ho, aggressive perpetrator self. My name is John R., and I'm a sexaholic. And my sobriety date is March 27th, 1995. And it is amazing, it never ceases to amaze me, that I've been able to be sober one day at a time for that period of time, and that I'm sober today. But anyway, getting back to my nervousness, I think that underneath it is what I'm giving something up and making this commitment to the fellowship and standing up in front of all of you at a conference and witnessing to my recovery. And I know that this is yet another step in committing myself to a new way of life, a way of life that I really want and that really gives me peace and joy. And I know that my addict really resists that. Every step and every commitment and every real connection that I make, I experience real resistance in doing that. And when I think about it, in essence, that's what working with others is about. And the other way is that really it is working with others in making real human connections with people with whom I share a commitment to recovery that keeps me sober. And I have no doubt that I would not be sober today if I didn't do it. You know, one of my, I also came through AA. I'll tell my story a little bit. But I know that one of my problems is that for 4 years, I worked a minimal AA program, just go to meetings and stay sober and have some people you say hi, and that allowed me to stay sober. And I didn't actually work the steps. I got a sponsor. I think I was 4 years sober in AA before I got the steps. And it really has bothered me that you can't work that at least I can't work that kind of program in SA. There must be something wrong with SA that I can't work that kind of program. And so I can't. And the level of program I work now seems to be just what I need, the absolute minimum I need to stay sober. Anyway, let me talk about what it was like a little bit. I grew up in a family where I was raised, and I think my mother, in a very loving way, taught me that sex is everything, and that the way that men and women connect in the world is sexually. And throughout my childhood, there were a series of men coming in and out of our house. And I think that I was the eldest son. We were talking about this a little bit, about being the eldest son. And my mother tried to raise me right, which is to raise me to be the kind of man that she found attractive. And she was, I think, pretty successful in that. And I was her confidant. From quite an early age, she took me into her confidence about what she liked in men and in sex and et cetera, and also began to instruct me about how I could be a lady killer. And I felt so special and so honored and so loved by all that, and I saw a lot of inappropriate things and experienced a lot of things that I got a lot of confused messages. And but I think the most basic message I got about life was that the way people connect is through sex, but that doesn't mean that there's any trust at all. You can't trust the other person. It's a war. It's a battle, and the way you win is to control the other person, essentially through sex. And the woman is going to act like she wants control, but really she doesn't. She really wants you to be a son of a bitch. Anyway, really. So anyway, that's the message I went into adolescence with, and then the 60s came, and I saw a chance to be powerful, which was in liberation movements of the 60s. And I devoted a great deal of time to try to sort of combining these discourses, these ways of that really, in doing these things to you, I'm really liberating you. And this is really part of our liberation, is that we do these things together to various women. And I worked very hard at constructing relationships like that. And certainly part of it was the abundant use of chemicals with that too, alcohol and drugs, etc. And as the 60s turned into the 70s, I think the sort of political and liberation parts of it became less important, and just the obsessive parts, the alcohol and drugs and obsessive sexual relationships, became front and center. And I actually happened upon a diary I wrote in the late... meanwhile, of course, there's that basic, as we know, the underlying foundation of pornography and masturbation that almost goes without saying. But that really is the one... It's like, for me, in terms of my chemical addiction, alcohol is a drug that's always there for me. Other drugs come and go, but alcohol is always there. And I feel the same way. Various predilections in sexual addiction come and go, but pornography and masturbation is always there and always solid, and I can always count on it. But anyway, I happened to find a diary that I was keeping, and I was talking about it, that I was just too much stuck in pornography and masturbation at that time. And then I had a list of things to do about it. That is to say, how I might be able to contact some women that I could victimize. And so, in my way. But I really am thankful that I'm truly an addict, and that my best plans ultimately didn't succeed in the way I wanted to succeed them. That in realizing fantasies, it always involves real people, and real people have guilt and have anger and get STDs and get unwanted pregnancies, etc. And that at those moments when I thought I was closest to realizing these fantasies were moments that really brought me into hell and misery. And so by my mid-30s, I thought there was something wrong in my life, that this wasn't enough. But by that time, I'd moved to Silver Lake in L.A., and I was part of I won't go into it. I had the perfect pad and everything, but things were not going well. And so anyway, I really felt some spiritual emptiness in my life. For one thing, the 60s were definitely over, and I finally had really come to that conclusion. And I think, as many do in spiritual crisis, I turned to Hollywood. And it really was that Christmas when I saw It's a Wonderful Life. I said, that's what I want. That's what I want. I want to be George Bailey. I want this, that'll cure me. I just need to get married and have a regular life and everything, and that'll do it. I really remember that revelation. And then I remember trying to convince my girlfriend at the time that that's what we needed to do. And as my spiritual growth, at that time I really had an experience of God. I began to realize that there was a God that loved and cared for me, and that's really important that I began to realize that. But that began the bargaining process with Him about how much can I give you in order to be able to experience the love and forgiveness you offer me. Like maybe 20% of my life is okay, or I'll do this, etc., etc. And I realized that that bargaining process that began then in the early 1980s for me is going on today. And it's surrender by degrees, I know, for me in my relationship with my higher power. And at first it led me into a church, and then it led me into AA, and then it led me into marriage. And then I think for a while that seemed really good to me because I'd given everything up except this one little corner. And I think of my double life, that I was working a good program in AA, I was a leader in the church, etc., and I just had this one little thing, which was primarily masturbation and pornography and euphoric recall. And other than that, and I had quite a bit of that, actually, and as people for my first step know, I knew this was messing me up, so I needed to get it out. So actually, over a period of a couple of years, I wrote down my whole story, my whole acting out. This about a 200-page single-spaced novel, which I never tried to publish, But I was really attached to that. And I really tried this catharsis stuff over and over again. But finally, doing a serious fourth step in AA led me into SA in 1990. And there are a couple people in in San Diego, and there are a couple of people in this room that were there at that time. But like I think a number of people, the first time didn't quite make it for me. Anyway, I had a whole set of judgments about SA. I won't go through them. Some are quite probably familiar to you. For one, a lot of them had to do with the fact that it wasn't AA, and that it didn't work like AA, and it didn't feel like AA, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it wasn't as easy for me as AA. And finally, after about a year, after a little over a year, I actually had a year of sobriety, I went back out and decided, I'm sure you've never heard this before, I can work on my sexual addiction in my AA program. All right? And that worked. And then, by the way, this was with the strong support and enthusiastic support of my therapist. God, you're finally getting over these neurotic hang-ups you have about your sexuality, John, I remember. And I still remember when I broke my sobriety in 91, which was this liberating act that I was going to masturbate in a healthy, happy, loving way. And I did it. Anyway. And the rest is history. The definition of addiction in Joe and Charlie, I really love it. When you try to stop, you can't stop, and when you try to moderate, you can't moderate. And that was me, and I was back into my secret life. And again, at this point, I was convinced that I can't lie. My AA program convinced me lying is wrong. And I have to figure out a way to do this without lying. And or at least overtly telling a lie. And this was, which meant, well, it didn't work. I'll just put it that way. I went through a period trying to convince my wife that this behavior really was okay, and praise her soul, she never was prepared to buy that. And I really am grateful for that. But I never could get her to buy my line of bullshit. And, pardon me, these are really stubborn sometimes. It's really great. And the other thing, and just to tell you one, during that period, I think this was about 94, I was coming home from my home AA meeting, and I'd led the meeting, and I was really spiritual. I mean, like I was walking about 3 feet off the ground. And I came to the door of my apartment, and I opened the door, and there, right in front of the door, was all my pornography in a stack. That my wife and I had been planning a trip, and she'd been looking for some maps for the trip. And she'd found this, and then there was a note on it, saying some not very nice things, and she wasn't there. So my spiritual high kind of evaporated. And I lied big time behind that one to pull that one back together, really. But at any rate, finally in 1995, a couple of things happened that pushed me over the edge. One was that I went to Japan on a one-year sabbatical to do some research, a place I'd been before. But for me, Tokyo is an extremely, extremely slippery place for a variety of reasons that some of you in this room know. Anyway, I won't go into those, but it's a very slippery place for a white man who speaks Japanese, I'll put it that way, who's as much of a predator as I am. And the other thing that happened was the Internet, the World Wide Web. Cyberspace was here. And I was at the University of Tokyo with a high-speed T1 connection. Whoa. And anyway, I don't think I have to tell some of you what that means. And I really do think it's like the advent of crack cocaine. I really think there are real analogies. It's cheap, in many cases free, and it goes right to the brain. And if you can use your search engine and et cetera, it's really a scary thing, I think. But anyway, I got to the point where one day I'd gone into my office on Saturday to look at pornography on my computer, and I had my pants down around my knees at my desk. And typically there weren't many people in on Saturday in this office. And I heard steps coming down the hall, and I realized that in my eagerness I'd neglected to lock the door. This was one of my Japanese colleagues coming up the hall. And, but anyway, fortunately, or whatever, this person walked on past the door. But I began to think that maybe I was a little powerless. I thought. And I said, I think I am so desperate at this point, I'm ready to try SA again. But then it was really difficult. The SA is very small in Tokyo, but I thought it didn't exist. And I actually sat through 2 SLAA meetings where there was nobody else there. I mean, I was really desperate at that time. Which, I don't know, maybe some of you think those are the best kind of SLAA meetings, but I take no position on that. But then I called up a priest who actually had been my first AA sponsor way back in '85, and I remember it was a payphone, and I was talking to him, and how's it going? Oh, my recovery's going great. And I said, but Roy, there's another addiction I'm having a kind of problem with. And he said, there's SA here. I don't know how he guessed, but anyway, and that led me to my first SA meeting, and that was March 27th, 1995. By the grace of God, I've been able to stay sober one day at a time since then. But in sobriety, my faith still falters. I still fall into bargaining and trying to figure out that way that has escaped me up to now, how to control and enjoy it without having the consequences that I know it brings into my life and in my relationships with others, with myself, and with my higher power. And the chief way I grow in gratitude for my imperfect sobriety is the new relationship I have with God and others as a result of sobriety. Even when I feel so uncomfortable and I feel, when I don't, in fact, desire sobriety. And there are days, I was struck by what Roy Kay said. And I do have days when I don't desire sobriety. But I still really cannot figure out a way that I want to go ahead with a life that doesn't involve the relationships I have with people that I've built in sobriety. And another way to say it is there are days in my program, and not so many, when I don't care enough about myself to stay sober for myself. But I do care for all those people that I built relationships with that are dependent upon me staying sober. And I thought this was a great insight. And then I read the big book, and it says, the best way to stay sober is to work with others. I thought, Bill just read my mind. Because that's really what I've been drawn to in my experience. And I'm very fortunate. There's a number of people in this room whom I sponsor, and I think they're working really good programs, and by the grace of God, staying sober. And a little while ago, I was reflecting on why do I have these sponsees that stay sober? And I knew it wasn't because I'm so great. I could eliminate that one. Well, I was tempted for a minute. Okay, to be honest. Okay, but all right. I moved on past that one, and I really believe the reason is that God in His love knows just what I need to stay sober, how sick I am, and that I need these relationships with these guys that are really working good programs and really trying to stay sober, for me to do so. And so it's really a great act of His love. So anyway, I'm going to talk just a little bit about giving and receiving sponsorship here. I recognize that, one of the great beauties of sexaholism is that it's so obviously and centrally a disease of relationship misconnection, of being love crippled. And I still feel so inadequate and so ill-made when it comes to having relationships with other human beings based on an intimacy founded in honesty and mutual regard. It's so deeply ingrained in me that intimacy needs to be based on secrecy and manipulativeness and power, control, etc. And that's why giving and receiving sponsorship in the way that relationship embodies the practice of the steps is so healing for me. And what I've found in the practice of sponsorship, above all, is what we hear again and again. It's one of those things you hear until you don't hear it anymore. That the one thing we need to achieve sobriety, no matter how sick we are, is the capacity to be honest. And that's great. That's one of those phrases for which, to me, that has great wisdom, and I've grown in my ability to appreciate this. That one way I think about what sponsorship is developing the capacity to be honest, to have a relationship that's intimate and caring, and yet based on honesty. And we need practice. I need practice. And that's really what, in a sense, sponsorship is about, is this relationship which, from the very beginning, has a foundation in honesty. And that's why it's important to work with another sexaholic. Because it's only with another sexaholic that there's no excuse not to be honest. Really, with anyone else, there's a point where my behavior is incomprehensible. The fact that given my life now after 2.5 years, I still battle with lust so much, and I still sometimes violate my boundaries. I can talk to many people, and they'll tell me what to do. Well, why don't you just stop, right? You're hurting yourself. Thank you. Thank you very much. And that does tend to put a damper on my ability to be honest with that person about the most shameful, secretive parts of my life. But in an SA, I know for many of us, when I came in and others when I came in, here was the first place where I could be honest. There's no, in fact, I'm urged to be honest because I think the beautiful sacred space of SA is that, when SA works is that I'm accepted as a sexaholic, there's no judgment, there's no moralization, there's condemnation, but on the other hand, there's no facilitation, right? There's a real facilitation of recovery. And it's very, very hard to find that balance. I know we're still looking for it, I'm looking for it, but that's that space that I come into, and that's manifest in the relationship with the sponsee. And so, in that sense, my first responsibility as a sponsor is to serve as a witness to the efficacy of the program. That God's power has kept a guy as sick as me sober one day at a time, and that it can do it for you. And if you progressively take the actions of surrender through the steps, one day can give you today. There's a way for you to stay sober today using the power of the steps. And also, I got to say that right from the beginning with newcomers, I say to them, and you can have a new life. You can have a completely different life. And typically, it's not, don't want to hear it so much, but I think it's really important to hold that out there. But if you have if intimacy in sponsorship or in relationships as a whole is based on honesty, that means you have to be willing to not hold on to the relationship at any cost. And I think that's hard for me, and that's hard for a lot of people. Because there's a point at which you have to, there are relationships, and I've had relationships with sponsees, where I had to make a choice between my own integrity and between this fundamental commitment to honesty and the relationship. And had to be prepared to walk away. And that's hard. It's something to grieve about, but you've got to be able to really ultimately be sincere that the fundamental commitment is to the honesty and to the growth in the program. And anyway, my typical day now, I think I have on the average 2 to 3 contacts with other people in the program, sometimes more. And that seems to me to be just about right. My wife doesn't agree with that, but my wife's not on the program, and again, I think some of you know, she wants the one thing that I can't give her. She wants me to graduate, right? And we've had many talks about that, actually. That's the one thing I can't give her, is I'm really happy that you're sober, I just wish you didn't have to go to these meetings, right? So, but anyway, I've got to put my program first, and we're working that out. So 2 to 3 contacts a day, and for me, in terms of practices, it's absolutely essential to set clear boundaries, to be really honest with myself about what those boundaries are, what it means for me to take that first step toward lust, and be accountable for those boundaries. Immediately accountable for those boundaries in the relationship. Sponsor-sponsee relationship. And that's an activity that's really worked for me and worked for others, I think. I can't, even pretty trivial stuff, to be accountable for that. And when I have these people calling me, it's easy. One way that solidifies itself or crystallizes itself, and I know a lot of people use this in this room, is in daily sobriety renewals, which can be really powerful if you take them seriously and they just don't become blah, blah, blah. Blah, 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 blah. Me too. Blah, 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 right? But, I mean, if you actually are able to, if I am actually able to listen to them and use them. And I guess what I want to say about that is that in a sense, when I concretize it or materialize it, what does progressive victory over lust mean? I mean, a lot of it means within the fellowship, within the context of the fellowship, growing in my progressive ability to be honest with myself and honest with the people in the fellowship. And it's something I still really struggle with. There still comes times when I have some secrets that I want to hold on to, or there's something I'm so ashamed of that I don't want to share it. And then there are these moments, and I have them. It seems I don't know. I try to think why they are, but periodically I go through these periods of rebellion against the program, and the strangest things can start it. I don't know, or nothing can start it. Well, typically the only times I really have problems are when things are going well or things aren't going well. Actually, I can narrow it. I can narrow it down to that. I can. Those are my only real triggers. And then I get it. Oh well, okay. I have a few of my rebellion scripts here. Why can't I watch that G-rated movie with my daughter? Right. This is really ridiculous. Why can't, and a lot, like I said, the thing about AA. Why can't I do my program the way? Why hasn't lust been removed from me? What's wrong with? Anybody in this one? What's wrong with beauty anyway? God made beauty, right? Probably never heard that one, or thought that one, or maybe this morning. But and anyway, that stuff can really get rolling in me sometimes, and I can start. And then that goes on to the next stage of, knowing what I know now and learning what I've learned now. Maybe I really could lust like a gentleman. I was a little extreme, and anyway. I know. I let that get out of hand, but I've gotten over resentment and fear and stuff now. So anyway. And that stuff can really start rolling in my head. And I appreciated what was said yesterday by a couple of speakers about the forgetfulness disease, because I've got to do a lot of big time, serious forgetting to entertain this stuff. It's I'm insane. Let's face it. That's all I can say. But and I had a real bout about a month ago. There are people in this room who participated in that. I played around with this stuff for quite a while, and but what happened was I got 3 phone calls in a period of about 2 hours. People that really needed needed me to be there and be sane for them, and I really care about these people. I really care about them, and I was called upon to embody the sanity of the program and my reaction to them. Regardless of where I was at about me. So I had to I was called upon by those relationships to embody that sanity. And by the time I hung up with the third person, it was just gone. The rebellion was over. Effortlessly, with no effort on my part. Completely. And I was really struck by the great eagerness with which God rushes out to draw me back. The great power and just His stubbornness and utterly, obviously, being unwilling to let me go. Really, it was, and I was really grateful. it's just such a overwhelming manifestation of His presence in my life. Yeah. Mostly it's mutuality, I think, especially after a sponsor gets through the first early days. But I as a sponsor, do have a mentor role, or the Japanese word sensei literally means the one who has done it before. So there's something or other that I've done before they have. Entertain all these crazy thoughts. But no, there's something I've done before they have, and I need to accept that and honor that. And for my sponsees, they know that manifests itself specifically in a couple of questions I ask occasionally. Can I give you some frank feedback? And the other is, can I make a suggestion? Right? And then we know, and early in sobriety I was thinking that sometimes the suggestions, I don't know if you remember has anybody seen the movie Karate Kid? But remember where the Pat Morita character says, paint the fence, wax on, wax off, go this way, and the kid is just going, what am I doing all this stuff for? And then it turns out he actually has learned how to kick and box and be really mean, and he thought he was just cleaning this guy's yard. And I think we got to accept the fact that sometimes early in sobriety it's necessary both to give and receive instructions that are done in that way. Call me every day. Let's do the sobriety renewals, right, etc. Things like that. No, you can't tell lies to your wife. You got to stop right now. No more lies. It's your wife. What? But I'm helping her. I'm protecting her. Yeah, etc. Okay. So, but I got to wrap it up here pretty quick. It's important to be vigilant for the issues of control and judgment that creep in the relationship. And it requires a balance and a growth in the relationship that I don't have, and that God needs to intervene. And sometimes there are rocky moments in any real relationship. And I don't want to get into the psychological terms, but I let my sponsor down because I'm not perfect or whatever. And what that is, though, and what's the great thing about it is, and all the old stuff comes up. Old stuff comes up for me, old stuff comes up for them. But it's an opportunity to go through these old scripts and these old problems within the context of the fellowship. And to have successful and loving outcomes that the last time you went through them with Mom or with whoever, you couldn't have. And that's a great victory. So, and that's the opportunity to build trust and to learn to practice the actions of love. And it's in that relationship, that somewhat shielded relationship, and also that relationship with a foundation of honesty built on a shared understanding of the addiction, that we can then take those insights and those practices out into those relationships, like with our spouses and with the other people we have. And that's really growing rich in recovery. And just to finish up, I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful for this new life I have and these new connections I have. And I was talking to somebody, a secretary at the department where I work, a few days ago, and she was saying, basically what she said is, John, you're really a talented guy. It's really too bad you didn't make anything out of your life. Basically, you could have been so successful. I'm 49 years old in graduate school. It is pretty interesting, but and I sort of went, oh, no. But then I walked away and I went, yeah, she's right. If it hadn't been for all these addictions, I could have really gotten it together. And I was thinking, well, what would that mean? What would I be now? Maybe a high-powered corporate attorney? No offense. Or like Donald Trump, and have a few, blown through a few marriages and getting really good at writing prenuptial agreements at this point, and have like a jillion enemies and stuff. Yeah, I could have been really been a success, and know God, utterly miserable and in hell. I could have really been a success if it wasn't for my addiction. And what do I have now? I have this life where I'm filled with gratitude, where I have a really pretty good marriage and a wonderful child, and I'm connecting with God, and and it was my addictions that gave me that. And for a moment, I was really grateful to be a sexaholic. And for all of it, just for a moment, to really be grateful for every moment of abuse and neglect I've experienced, All of that. I needed all of those things. All of that. The pain to get to where I am right now, which I am absolutely sure is where God wants me to be. And that's the great blessing of the gospel. Thank you very much.